Dead men tell no tales, and apparently the living ones don't either. We're taking a look at this weekend's box office. I'm DJ Wooldridge, and this is Screen Junkies News. Memorial Day weekend 2017 came and went and left a lot of studios in tears. Analysts are saying that this Memorial Day box office is the worst since 1999, and they warned that we're just getting warmed up for the bad news. Here to talk about this with me is Dan Merle.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
How's it going? Good.
I'm doing all right. The box office did not do so good, but I am doing fine.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad someone is.
So you just did a review for Baywatch.
Yeah, we're talking about Baywatch. We talked about pirates on my show, Dan's Labyrinth.
So you've seen both of them
this morning? Yeah, I've seen both of them.
Neither. For probably the same reasons that other people did.
You know, one of them, I found Pirates to be very reminiscent, for me, to a fault of the movies that came before.
Yes.
Just if you've seen a Pirates movie before, you're going to get that again.
Yeah.
And then Baywatch, was pretty subpar for me as far as the comedy goes.
What is even just good to look? A lot of pretty people in that movie.
A lot of pretty people, and it's the second consecutive year where I think that the Memorial Day weekend offerings, last year was X-Men Apocalypse and Alice Through the Looking Glass.
Yes.
And the story again last year was X-Men opening lower than expected, and then the bottom kind of falling out of Alice Through the Looking Glass. And this year it's history repeating itself because we have two different movies, but the same story for both of them. So
yeah, why do you think that is? Why is it's a long weekend? Are they just releasing the wrong movies over the weekend?
I found it's very curious to me, this strategy, and it may just be now just a numbers game. Why studios are choosing to release two quote unquote tentpole movies on the same weekend, because I think it's cannibalizing each other.
In Pirates, we've got it was in the top 25 global openings of all time.
It's great globally.
That's $275 million. It tracked to open for 90 to 100 million range, but is coming in with 77 million for the 4-day holiday weekend.
And that's been the story of these last couple summers, is tracking for these movies is big, and then the reviews, which we'll talk about a bit later, come out, and the bottom just kind of falls out of it. Or maybe the tracking numbers were off.
Do you think it's, with Pirates in particular, do you think it's kind of with, partly due to Johnny Depp's public image and what he's been dealing with? That was part of the reason I didn't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that take that into account. I don't know if I would put that as the #1 reason why his movies are underperforming a little bit. I mean, that is a story that's certainly all over the magazines, and not to minimize it, but I think that's not a huge reason of why it's not bleeding over in his public persona. I think part of the thing with Pirates is this is the 5th one. And for better or for worse, for me it was for worse, you know what you're going to get out of this movie. I mean,
we're 5 deep.
We're 5 deep, and they're not reinventing this franchise at all. There are a lot of people that enjoyed this Pirates movie, and I think it's because it had everything that the other Pirates movies had. The other side of that is when you play it safe like that, there's a lot of people that are going to say, I've been there, I've done that, I was already on the fence, and then the reviews come out and they say, like, well, I don't hear that it's good, the word of mouth isn't great, I'm going to stay home, it'll be out on streaming in 3 months anyway. Well,
I was kind of wondering maybe it didn't do as well because they're banking on some older star power, kind of what the Dark Universe monster movies are banking on as well, that I don't know will bring in the audiences. But on the other hand, Baywatch has The Rock, it has Zac Efron, it has Alexandra Daddario, and it's previews Wednesday night pulled in 1.25 million from 2,000 plus theaters, 27 million over 5 days against a negative cost of 60 million.
And this is a movie that was projected to come in at 40 to 50 million dollars, which is, again, this is the bigger of the two. Pirates came in a little under where it was supposed to be. But the global opening was good, was somewhat strong. So that movie's not so much in trouble as Baywatch. Now Baywatch, all eyes are turning to the international market because domestically this is going to vastly underperform based on what it was expected to do. And domestically, obviously this is only part of the story, but in a lot of ways too, the studio gets most of its bang for its buck with the domestic box office, even though it's a bit of a slice. You get a slice from the international box office, you get, I think, a larger piece of the pie from the U.S. box office, which is why we kind of cover it so much, that and the fact that it does open in the U.S. a lot of times before it opens internationally. Yeah. But now, you know, Baywatch is going to be another one. Like, is this going to be like Warcraft last year, where in the United States it was painted as a complete disaster? However, when you look at the overseas numbers,
it had to
may
cost
have broken
less
even.
than Warcraft.
Oh, I'm sure it did. I mean, you're talking different scales, but it's that kind of a movie where, you know, the U.S. money, if it's enough overseas, but it has to be a lot, because you don't get as much of that overseas dollar as you do in the U.S.
So is it just because the movies are bad? I feel like plenty of bad movies still do fine. It hurts to say, but it's true.
It is. No, a lot of bad movies do great, and a lot of great movies don't do well.
Yeah.
There's no alchemy to it. I mean, this has been frustrating people from the time that they've released movies.
Yeah.
Both of these movies, technically, looking at them on their face, should have done great.
Yeah.
The one thing that I think that we are seeing that's changing is the amount of competition with Netflix, and the fact that you only have to wait 3 to 4 months for it to be available to rent on digital HD, and the fact that movie theaters with IMAX upsells and upcharges are becoming more expensive there. And like I said, Pirates of the Caribbean, Baywatch, 2 tentpole releases from 2 different studios that in 10 years ago would have left the date to clear it for the other one. Now there's so many movies, they're forced into competition against each other, and competition, I think, is the key word.
Would it have done better if Pirates had sexy lifeguards and Baywatch had undead pirates?
I think
would they have done better?
Here's what I'll say. I think I would have liked both of those movies better.
That's fair. So another good question is there franchise fatigue? Are people? These are both franchises that are almost solely banking off name recognition.
Yeah.
But again, like Pirates, 5 movies deep.
Yeah.
Nobody's been really passionate about it since the first one. Baywatch, nobody was ever really passionate about it.
Yeah, well, Baywatch, Baywatch is interesting because that is a franchise that is a TV franchise, number one, and one that is of a generation 20 years prior to the key 1834 demo. I'm just in the top of that demographic, and that was still kind of only barely crossed over with my youth.
You know it existed.
I know it. I knew it existed. Right. It was that cheesy show that was on syndicated TV. That's the other thing, is Baywatch doesn't have necessarily a quality attached to it, as in like, oh, I loved that show. It certainly had a lot of viewers, but you know, 21 Jump Street, I think, had a lot of very nostalgic feelings from people. Like, oh, I watched that when I was a kid, and that was on Fox, and that was the kids, you know, I related to them. I think Baywatch people watched.
It was also hilarious. 21 Jump Street, the remake was hilarious.
21 Jump Street was legit. Yeah, Lord Miller. It was a hilarious movie, genuinely. So I think that with Pirates, it's definitely franchise fatigue, in that people have seen Pirates movies. This one didn't really serve up anything new. It was just another adventure in the same vein as all the other ones you've seen. With Baywatch, I think maybe it was just a disconnect of, they overestimated how many people would be interested in a Baywatch movie.
Do movies that are, we were kind of talking a little bit off camera, how there used to be movies that felt critic proof.
Yeah.
And does that exist anymore? Like, does that, for the big tentpole blockbuster movies?
I mean, 50 Shades, obviously, both of those movies. The first one particularly was just trashed by critics, and people went to see it. I think that there are some movies that are big enough that, yes, no matter what the critics are going to say, they're going to make a lot of money.
Marvel could crank out a few junk movies and they would still be fine.
Yeah. I mean, Marvel has a 2 or 3 movie buffer, I think. And even as much as people debate about the reviews on the DC movies that we've seen so far, Wonder Woman coming up this year, they make a lot of money.
They make a lot of money.
I mean, no, Batman v Superman didn't make $1 billion, but it made like $800 million. That's still a lot of money. So I feel like there are movies, yes, that are quote unquote critic proof. I think that you're seeing fewer of them though, and I think that you have a much smaller margin for error.
So a lot of people will be like, "Oh, Rotten Tomatoes, it's the devil." But reviews have existed forever. There've always been reviews, and people have always decided that's the reason reviews exist. Like, movies have always cost money. We don't have a lot of it. So I look at a review to decide what I'm going to go see.
Right, reviewers are not supposed to be the definitive word, and that's, reviewers have always been, hey, what's the buzz on a movie? And I was reading some articles over the weekend. Even The Rock was kind of tweeting some stuff out, kind of saying like, oh, it's the fans, it's for the fans, it's not for the critics. And you know, some of the studios are saying like, well, we didn't hit our numbers. Yeah, exactly. We didn't hit our numbers because the reviews were bad, and that, well, then make a better movie. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you're gonna blame the reviews for your movie not delivering, that's not an independent process. You produced a film, unless you did something to the families of every single critic that reviewed the movie. Something wasn't.
Stop doing that. If you're doing that,
stop it. Number one, yes, but something wasn't working with the people that reviewed the movies. And I agree, the end all be all of everything shouldn't be what the reviewers say. But if you're a studio and your movie opens below expectations or bombs, and you look at the reviews, which were pretty bad, not borderline bad. In the case of Pirates, 32%. In the case of Baywatch, 19%. Like generally, that indicates at the very least mixed to negative reviews. I don't think you should be pointing your finger at the reviewers. I think you should probably say, what did we do that maybe wasn't connecting as well?
Well, like we just said, there's some movies, like the DC movies, still made a lot of money, even though critics ripped them apart. And for the fans out there, like opinion, this does not adhere to most tentpole movies, but I remember looking at the Rotten Tomatoes for Reservoir Dogs, and it's like 50-50.
Yeah.
And I love that movie. You know what I mean?
Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of Crystal Skull is like 80% fresh reviews. Reviews are not the end all be all.
Well,
that's true. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was very well reviewed when it came out. You can go look right now.
That is
100% true.
Oh my goodness.
Reviews are not that. It's always like critics are not there to be the arbiter of taste. Critics are there because there's a role in society of art criticism, and film is a form of art, and there are people, you know, that do that, and then you can find the ones that you like, and then if you find the critic that you like that connects to you, then you can use that as your arbiter of, well, I like this movie or not. But critics are just there to say, hey, I saw this, here's what I thought. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Whatever. But
so find a reliable critical source that kind of aligns with your views, like ScreenJunkies News and our reviews,
if you so choose.
If you so choose, and then that can be, instead of like, because Rotten Tomatoes is just an aggregate. It's just
Rotten Tomatoes is a resource. Rotten Tomatoes is a place where all of the reviews can be aggregated in one place, so you don't have to open 35 different tabs. Now the tomato meter, there's can be debates about green, red, yes, no, good, bad, and how that can be used. But there's user ratings. There's so much more intricacy to reviews than good and bad. And again, I think from a broader perspective, from the studio's standpoint particularly, I just really think for people that love to slap certified fresh on the Blu-ray if it gets good reviews, but then to turn around on the other end and say, oh, well, our movie bombed, our movie was good, but the reviews are flawed. It's like I'm not wrong, your numbers are wrong. Like, I think that's a bit delusional.
In positive news, Disney's still making all the money ever.
Every dollar.
Beauty and the Beast, 500 million. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, 330 million. So they're doing fine.
Yeah, Disney has got a great. They have the market cornered as far as big blockbuster filmmaking. Beauty and the Beast, $500 million domestically. It's only the 8th movie to ever do that, but 4 of them were made in the last 3 years. So. But 3 of them were Disney.
Yeah. So they figured it out. If instead of blaming Rotten Tomatoes, maybe figure out what Disney's cooking. And go from there. But we want to know, what did you guys see this weekend? Are you planning on seeing any of these movies? Let us know in the comments below. And remember to be nice to each other. Thanks for watching. Please click here for more internets. Tweet us at ScreenJunkies News, and make sure to subscribe to ScreenJunkies News.